Hi again, everyone. It's Joey Johnston on behalf of Siegel Speakers. Our guest today is Bill Goldstein. Bill is a lawyer who has transformed himself into a sports executive, but that wasn't enough. Now he's transformed himself into an observationalist, a guy who can comment on life and the way we live life. Got a lot of opinions on that. You can hear Bill on his podcast, which is called Not That You Asked, and you can stream it on Spotify and iTunes. Part of Bill's background, he worked at the NBA, he worked for Madison Square Garden. He's very versed on the business of sports and the business of leading people, which is what he's done his whole life. You can find out a lot more about Bill on his website, which is billgoldstein.com. Bill, welcome. Glad to see you again.
Thanks, Joey. It's always a pleasure.
Bill, I would like to talk to you today about leadership. And anybody that visits a bookstore knows that lots of people have lots of opinions on leadership. You can see a whole section of books on leadership in any bookstore. And you're a guy who's come up through the business world, through the sports business world. You know what it's like to lead people and to move people in a direction. When you think about leadership, what comes to your mind first? What are the principles that you live by in terms of leadership? What's important to you in that realm?
Well, actually, I think that you put your finger on it in your question, because you used, I think, the term move people. And that's what the leader has to accomplish, right? That's the job. You're trying to get people from X to Y. You're leading them to Y. You don't get them there, you failed. If you get them close, good too. Okay, so the best leaders that we've had in the last 100 years in Western society, I think people would agree, have been FDR and Winston Churchill. And the president and Joe Biden, we're recording this on April the 10th, I guess, just to put it in a timeline. Biden has just been yielded to by Sanders. He's going to be the Democratic nominee. Trump, of course, will be the incumbent. They're both now trying to lead. Trump officially, Biden trying to demonstrate. In my view, neither of them are doing what FDR or Churchill would be doing, which is, I think, trying to be straightforward with the public about what's going on. Our governor here in New York, I think, has been exceptional at that. That's Andrew Cuomo. I liked his father even better than this guy, but he gets high marks for the way he's handling this right now. Talk straight, as straight as you can, based upon national security, of course. But most importantly, lay out the law to the people. Tell them what they got to do. Don't sugarcoat it. In fact, make it an ounce worse than it might be. And then convince them to do it. That's the hard part. That's the hard part. You got to sell it. You got to motivate people. You got to require people. Okay? So, for example, we have, as of this date, we don't have a national stay-at-home order in this country. They have it in many other countries. In New Zealand, where they've had almost nothing, they shut the place down like a trap a fat part of a month ago, and they never saw a spike, and now they have cases, but they're able to do contact tracing. In other words, if I have it, they trace whoever I've seen in the last whatever to see whether they have it. The numbers are small enough so that they can do that. In this country, the numbers have gotten so big, we can't do that yet. At some point, we got to do that. And in some communities, they are doing it now, right now. And that's how you control the spread. Anyway, all of that now takes sacrifice. Not that much sacrifice. I mean, stay at home. I mean, come on. We're not asking you to storm Normandy here, pal. Stay at home. And if you go out, wear a mask. Not voluntarily, wear a mask. And yes, the N95 masks, they go to the health providers first, of course. But let's make 1 billion more, please. Okay, we're not making ventilators here. We're making masks. Can't we stamp these babies out a couple of 100,000 a day? And require people, you don't wear a mask, you get a fat fine. And you understand. See, the other thing that people haven't been hammered with, that a leader would be hammering, is, remember, folks, you can be a carrier and not know it. So you could have it right now and not know it and give it to me, or vice versa. Now, if that's the case, if we don't know who has this, then telling people who are infected to wear masks when they go outside is a good idea. But now, how do you get everybody who's infected? The only way to do that is to make everybody wear a mask. Otherwise, you got people who have it, who are walking around, who don't know it, who are giving it and not protecting you from them, and vice versa. Anyway, you asked about leadership. I got started on this, but FDR and Churchill, and I wasn't alive for either one of them, but they motivated the country to take actions that they wouldn't have wanted to otherwise. We got to get that kind of leadership, and we need people to be taught, you see. I mean, if the president were not, I mean, his daily stuff, I mean, I don't want this to be partisan, but those press conferences, you know, are campaign rallies almost, and it's a phenomenal forum, and the guy is a great communicator. He's just got the wrong message. The message is, folks, we gotta be strong now. These are the things we gotta do. No exceptions. And the millennials and the young kids, I know you've had a hard time. It seems like there's been a calamity every 15 minutes in their lives. I mean, remember, these are kids who in kindergarten got 9/11. And every couple of years, a recession or a war or some other craziness has happened. And now this, and so they're almost numb to it. So it's harder to get them to do the right thing, because they think they know better, because they think that they can handle it, because they've handled everything else. And now they got no jobs, and they got student debt, and they got global warming to deal with, and now you want them to pay attention to this too. Okay, but not so much. I think that's what they are feeling. Now, look, you got to respect the fact that the density of stuff that they've had to contend with has been more dense than mine. I lived through everything that they lived through and more, of course, but it wasn't as dense. These kids have had a dose pretty regular. So you got to understand where their attitude comes from. We can handle this. We can handle this. We got to handle global warming. So we're good. Well, not so much. Okay. So, well, you got to sell that. You got to sell it. Now, if the millennials were in front of me right now, maybe they might think, okay. That kind of message and that kind of salesmanship and repetition. Trump is a genius at repetition. He appreciates more than any public figure I've ever seen the value of staying on message and repeating it. So, and I'll tell you what, if he stopped being so obviously partisan, an emphasis on the word obviously, okay? I mean, if you're obvious in what you're doing, no matter whether you like what the guy's doing or not, if they're obvious, you know, it's not authentic. But if he converted himself now to the role, he calls himself a cheerleader. I'm the cheerleader for the country. He thinks that's a good role. No, we don't need you as the cheerleader, pal. We need you as the coach. You're the coach. You got cheerleaders all lined up here. Good. Okay, we need them too. But we need the head coach. So, and that head coach has to move people, just exactly as you so much more succinctly than I explained in your question.
You mentioned FDR and Churchill. Obviously, I wasn't alive for either of those guys, but I know enough in history to know how effective they were as communicators. In fact, Winston Churchill gave what I think is the most brilliant commencement speech ever, and you probably know what I'm talking about, where he got to the podium and said, "Never, never, never, never give up," and he sat down. That's a pretty good speech.
Beautiful.
Pretty good speech.
You know that the Gettysburg Address was like 10 seconds. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but it was very short.
Yeah,
and Lincoln thought it was a crappy speech.
Yeah, well,
it
actually didn't get good reviews initially and grew in time. But yeah, nowadays the Gettysburg Address would be like us clearing our throats. It was so short. Yeah. But yeah, it's played well over time for sure. Yeah. Gettysburg Address.
But never give up.
Yeah, but okay, Lincoln, Churchill, FDR, these guys knew how to communicate, and they certainly played well in their eras. Do you think Lincoln, FDR, Churchill would plug right into the 21st century as leaders? Have things changed? Would their styles work? And is there any?
I think the country wants exactly what you suggest we need. We need leadership, but you know, you've got to have the right message, and the right message here is we got to do these 4 or 5 things. Everybody has to do them. No exceptions. No exceptions. No exceptions. I want you. If your neighbor isn't doing it, I want you to report them. I'm sorry, but that's how serious this is. You have to stay in your house. If you want to go out of your house, I mean, in Israel, you want to leave the house, you got to make a phone call. I've got to go to the grocery store. This is the address. It's 45 minutes I'm going to need. They send you a pass. You go out, you're caught without the pass. It's not a good day for you, you know. You know, you can call that big brother. You can call, you know, we need a big brother. That's what I'm saying. That's the leader we need now is that person who knows the direction. I'll tell you who is so impressive in this environment. I never thought about him. You know, I was captivated by Bloomberg's campaign for presidency just because of the size of his investment and how he went about it. And he's a New Yorker, and I've met him, and so I followed it closely. But Bill Gates has been, I don't know whether you've seen any of his stuff.
Yeah.
Man.
Visionary.
Well, a visionary, but he comes off with a humility and a not, I know it all. He doesn't scream at you like I just did. He'd sell it, you know, he'd be a great president.
Yeah.
I think.
Do you think, do people just need a natural ability to be authentic? Can anybody be authentic? Is it more difficult for others? Because there are, like you said, Bill Gates, he speaks and he oozes.
Well, it's just the absence. It's being comfortable in your own skin and the absence of pretense. You can't be authentic if you can't be yourself. If you're covering it up with a bunch of other stuff, and you know, and if you're nervous. Now that guy's not nervous.
Yeah.
When he's talking, he's it's not. He's not nervous because he's the biggest fish in the pond and he can do what he wants, so he can dictate. No, he's not nervous because he's totally comfortable in his skin. And, you know, he might have an axe to grind, but he knows it's a righteous axe to grind.
When you talk about leadership in the 21st century, I mean, obviously the way we live and operate now is different than it was 50 years ago. Life has changed. Our world has changed. How does that translate into leadership? When you're trying to lead a company or lead a country or lead anyone in this 21st century, what are the key things that you need in your arsenal?
Well, I mean, I think the great leaders of the past would be great now. I think the job is the same. And, you know, I suppose the first thing that you hope, I mean, this is central because it doesn't matter what kind of a motivator you are. If your message is lousy, I mean, Hitler was a great salesman. We're not in love with his message particularly, though, are we?
No.
So your message, in other words, you've got to have great cognition about what's important. You got to understand the world and the issues and what the path forward is. That's the best one. So your understanding and wisdom is of course hugely important, and then it's really, I mean, it's stylistic, you know. I mean, I think Donald Trump could fill the role. I think Joe Biden actually is even better at it. Is about, you know, I mean, we criticize Biden because he, you know, he stumbles, he slips up when he's speaking, and that's a whole nother topic. But he comes off, you know, as a fatherly figure, and he's almost tender. And he might, you know, if I was Joe Biden, boy, I wouldn't be carping about what Trump has done wrong. There's other people who can do that. He should be demonstrating he should be talking about the things that, you know, now, you know, there should be a national stay-at-home order. You got to wear a mask. If you don't have a mask, then improvise a mask. You know, they say these masks, these bandanas, are only 50% as good as a N95 mask. Well, geez, 50% would be pretty good. Mm-hmm. We can knock off 50% of these cases by wearing a bandana. So why weren't we wearing bandanas 60 days ago?
Because we weren't told to. We weren't told to.
Anyway, I think that well, it would be great to transport Abe Lincoln into this situation.
Yeah. What if you're a businessman, if you're in a boardroom and you're in the year 2020 with a new generation of people that are adhered to technology, what do you have to keep in mind in terms of leading those people who've come from a different generation? Have leadership principles changed in a way where you need different skill sets to communicate with the new generation, or universal topics still good to move people?
Well, I think you have to be fluent in technology to even get their attention, right? And that's new. And it'd be hard for somebody to lead millennials if they weren't technically competent, or it'd be harder anyway. But I mean, you know, I think consumerism is going to change from this. I don't think we ever spring back to where we were from this. You know, there's a neighbor here. I mean, I've been asked and discussed whether this is the heaviest thing that's ever happened in my lifetime, and the answer is yes. But I heard the other day from a woman who's 102 years old who said the same thing. So, you know, snapping back to normal after something like this, you know, is not even necessarily, you know, the best course, right? I mean, you know, there was a discussion the other day with people about this burden of homeschooling, yeah? And these kids are going to fall behind. And now they're not going to get back until September, if they even get back then, and how they're never going to make it up and so forth. And with respect to certain subjects, that could be the case, although parents and others hopefully are going to make up for a lot of that. But what is forgotten is that there will be opportunity to learn things that they should know that they were not going to learn if school had been in. Like, for example, there's going to be, you know, people are going to be making economic sacrifices. Families aren't going to have as much money. The children are going to see that. They're going to understand that they got to stretch a dollar. They're going to begin to appreciate financial issues earlier and become more competent in them sooner. And this actually is stuff that should be taught in school. I think that schools ought to have a whole silo from kindergarten to the 12th grade on finance. You can weave in all the math you want in there, but at the end of the day, they better know how to function as adults in the real world with money. And kids now home participating in what's going on, I think, you know, will be advantaged because of that. Imagine also, you know, now you're cooking 3 meals a day, family, so forth. Somebody's got to do it, clean it, all the rest. Organize it. I've always said, they used to have home ec for girls and boys used to do carpentry and everything. How silly that is. This could be an opportunity for boys to learn how to cook. Girls too. My daughter doesn't know how to cook, so it isn't just boys that need to know how to cook. And everybody to the time for home improvement, figure out carpentry and other skills that you wouldn't otherwise learn. So and one would suppose that just the blessing of reading and coming to love reading, experiencing the first time you experience wanting to end conversation, end a meal, to get back to a book. Now, when that happens, the world's opened up to you. All these books have become relevant. God forbid you should read one twice, 20 years apart, So hopefully that kind of, experience is happening now more and more to kids because of this. So, I think they'll be okay. And if I had young children now, I'd be worrying more about more things now than I would just the curriculum that the school was sending home. So
yeah.
I don't know where we got to school on, but you got me going there, Joey. So
Yeah, it's good points. It's actually great food for thought there. In your roles as a leader in business and in sports, what motivated you? What did you rely on to get your job done over the course of time? Whether it was quotes or principles or various concepts, what did you believe in strongly that allowed you to get your job done and allowed you to move people?
Well, that's a question, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. You kind of asked two different questions. As a leader, what did I think about? I ran a pretty small shop, 50 people or less, I didn't think about it particularly. I don't really think I thought about it. I probably should have thought about it more. I used to do gimmicks. I thought that was cool, but I think I was respected if I was because of how I related to people. But I used to go. We had a telemarketing room, and that's where we had commission-only kids who wanted to break into the sports business. People would come. They'd want to break into the sports business, and we had some interns, but otherwise we might not. But if you would want to learn how to sell, which is the most valuable skill you could have in any profession, the ability to sell, the ability to generate revenue, if you have that skill, you have leverage, you have power. You want to develop that. We got a back room at telemarketing. I think there's a few phones that are unspoken for, blah, blah, blah. And we had kids work in the back room for 6 months at a clip. It was also seasonal. We didn't keep them on, although we would hire one or two who were the best and integrate them into the company if we could. But I would occasionally go back in the back room and grab a call list and start making the same calls that they had to make and see if I could turn something into a sale and let them listen and also let them hear me get the phone hung up on me 9 times out of 10. If not hung up, not succeed and see. But that's a little gimmicky, I didn't do it once a week, you know what I mean? So I did it, but I think hopefully it counted too. But I think I led on just being real, and not having any time for much else, and understanding, what mattered most, of course, was feeding my family, right? So we talk about principles and everything else, but your number one job is to earn a living, and so that's the balance, it's the balance between, and we can translate it into the real world now too. So in business, the pressure, the requirement is to generate a profit. Otherwise, you can't support anybody. On the other hand, you don't want to be wretched, and never leave any money on the table, and exert as much power as you can over everybody and squeeze the situation dry. You don't want that either. So that's what you have to try to balance is the humanity of it, and yet the need to be profitable. Well, these days, switch profit for getting elected, and you got the same thing. So if these guys would think about what the people need now, they need to be led, they need to be motivated, they need to be harangued even, they need to be won over by me being Trump or me being Biden. And, you don't do it by carping at the other guy, and you don't do it by beating your chest.
So leaders are salesmen. The best leaders are the best salesmen.
If they believe in what they're selling, if they would buy it themselves. Yeah. You gotta, not to say that I've never sold stuff that that I thought was platinum, but you want, if you don't believe that the deal makes sense, you're going to have a hard time selling it unless you're hoodwinking the other guy. Yeah. And then it won't hold up.
I think if you mention salesman to the average person, they'll have a negative connotation.
How silly.
So reverse that for me. Reverse why salesmen are actually admirable, and the core of our society, that they get commerce going. Tell me why a salesman should be thought of in a noble way.
Yeah, I'm going to go wider than that, Joey, because I'm going to say that we're all salesmen, and we're all selling ourselves. We're selling our position. When we're parenting, we're selling whatever it is that we want our kid to do or think. In business, it's not that much different. And, and that's how I tell people to think about it. But on the other hand, the universal truth about selling is that no one wants to do it. And why would you want to do it? Who wants to be on their hands and knees? Who wants to be asking people to do something? Who wants no one? It's not easy work. People I used to interview these kids. They want to get in the sports business. I said, one of the questions I would get to at some point was, have you done any selling? Oh, no. I don't like to sell. I have a hard time, asking people for things, but I can get things done, boy. And, you get, but, selling, it makes me nervous. Really? You don't like to sell? Boy, do you know that nobody likes to sell? Nobody. Do you know also that the richest people in the world are salesmen? Yeah, and it should be, because it's how to work. So we're selling all the time, and nobody likes doing it. And just try to make it a square deal. And if it isn't even a deal, here the deal with the public is: look, if you don't do this, this could go from awful to even worse. Do we want the bubonic plague here? Okay, well, look what we got. And look what we were talking about 30 days ago. And you want me to project what's going to go on in October? We're in April now? I'm worried about what you're going to do tonight. Okay? That's what I'm worried about. Tomorrow, I'll be telling you the same thing with maybe a little different flip, because things might have changed. This is what the president or Biden ought to be doing every night: a message of motivation, getting people to actually look forward to them. And, people do want to be inspired. Look, people are being inspired. These people are traveling from one jurisdiction to another, from one state to another, volunteering, putting themselves in harm's way. And of course, that's what soldiers did all the time. Imagine the job that Eisenhower had, motivating the troops to take on Normandy, and them on those boats, and knowing, that a lot of them were never going to be having grandchildren. I mean, how was that accomplished? Of course, there it was the military, and it was an order, and they had that kind of muscle, but still those guys had to jump off the boat. So anyway, it's a tough job. I mean, I make it sound like would be a snap. It wouldn't be, but I think the country would be eager for leadership. We got all this copying going on, and it's not working. We're not doing a great job. We're not doing a great job, and
Okay.
And it's still early.
Well, Bill, you've given us a lot of great things to think about there, and a wide-ranging conversation. He's Bill Goldstein. You can listen to his opinions on his podcast, which is Not That You Asked, and you can stream it on Spotify and iTunes. You can also find out more about him through his website, billgoldstein.com. Bill would love to speak to your group on a number of subjects. If you want to find out more about that, find out more about what he can do through SiegelSpeakers.com. And we'll be back with more in this series, more opinions from Bill, more thoughts from Bill. Bill, thank you very much for talking to us. I'm Joey Johnston on behalf of Siegel Speakers, and we'll see you next time.